Good evening, everyone. The time is 7 o'clock, and I call to order this Board of Trustees meeting of February 21st, 2024. As the first order of business, would everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. May be seated. Good evening, everyone here and on Zoom. I have a few comments to make. The first one is extremely important from my perspective. We have completed our search for a new police chief, and I would like to thank the search committee headed by Deputy Mayor Lindsay, who was assisted by Trustee Brooke, former trustee, now council member Kasker, and police officer and PBA President Sutherland. This committee worked long and hard to find the best possible candidate to replace our distinguished departing chief, David Conklin. And they have selected the deputy chief from the town of Goshen, Al Faust, and Deputy Mayor Lindsay will speak a little bit more on that as the head of the committee later on in this particular board meeting. I'd also like to thank the DPW. I'd like to thank them, first of all, for their effective snow removal during the last two storms from last week. And in addition, I'd like to note that for weeks, the police officers who were in the booth at the gate had been complaining about the mail slot, which you may or may not see that existed below the window. That mail slot leads to a large box, a metal box, and the officers sitting in their swivel chairs, every time they swiveled towards the window, would strike their knees on this box. And in fact, I understand that one or two officers may have torn their pants on the box. So with the good work of the DPW, that particular obstacle was removed recently from the booth. And if you stop by, you'll see it was artfully replaced with wood paneling that looks absolutely perfect. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you to your crew. With respect to the Communications Committee, I do have an update. I reported to you last month that the Crown Castle Company did an RF drive-around study in the village to determine where the signal strengths were good and where they were not so good. We've moved past that point to where the Crown Castle people have told us that they will be working with the village to contact the three major carriers to request that they install mini cells throughout the village. The one thing I want to say is that this is not going to be a short process. We've waited 6 years or so and worked on this through two administrations, but I want you all to know that we are seriously moving forward on the issue of improving cell service in this community. The Crown Castle folks will be interfacing with Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T to get them to acknowledge that cell service in the village is poor and needs to be improved, and to get them to finance the installation of mini cells on utility poles throughout the village. These mini cells are the size of small suitcases. They will be unobtrusive once they're in, and we are moving in that direction. And I think that's a major advancement to improve cellular communications here in the village. Finally, I want to make a note on the agenda. I placed on the agenda an item called fences. Fences were Chapter 49 of the local law, and that issue came up as a result of a recent BZA meeting. And the issue was, does Chapter 49 still exist here in the village? It may have, in 2001, been sunset. Now, Chapter 49 prohibited the installation of perimeter fences. And the issue of whether that law is still in effect is subject to legal opinions. Today, we received two letters from two attorneys representing parties in the BZA matter who claim that the law is still effective and was never properly sunset. However, we have opinions from, informal opinions from the bar attorney And we are seeking an opinion from the village attorney as to whether that is accurate. So the question becomes whether perimeter fences are prohibited by this law or whether this law became ineffective as of 2009. And as a result of that, we cannot discuss the matter until our village attorney speaks to that particular point. So that agenda item, for anybody who's come forward tonight and appeared either in person or on Zoom, will be tabled at least until next month. So with that being said, I appreciate your attention, and I'll turn it over to the deputy mayor for her comments.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did we do a roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate that, Trustee Scherer. A roll call, Village Clerk Dougherty.
Absolutely. And thank you, Trustee Scherer. Mayor Citrin,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Lindsay,
Present.
Trustee Brooke,
Present.
Trustee Scherer,
Present via Zoom, not in the location that I had originally indicated to you. I'm actually in my apartment in New York City.
thank you. And Trustee Shaw, who is, I think, absent.
She's overseas.
I think
Oh,
I see.
is that?
iPhone on.
Oh, there she is.
All right.
We can't hear you, Trustee Shaw. Give her a minute. You're on mute.
I think we can mark her as present, though.
Yes.
Can you hear us? That's the key.
Give us a thumbs up.
Thumbs up?
Hi, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
All members
Yes,
of the board.
I'm
are
present from Cambodia.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right, with that being said, I'm sorry I didn't call the roll. I'll turn it over to the deputy mayor for her comments.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start out with an update on our climate smart and clean energy programs that we are pursuing. Jim Hayes, who is the chair of the Climate Smart Community Task Force, is here in the village office tonight, so I know that he has some comments for us. And I did give a clean energy, climate smart update at the town board meeting February 12th. And we outlined how close we are to getting certified, given all the actions we've taken and the updates from New York State and how much money is available once we are certified. The money would then be applied to further clean energy projects. So we're very excited to be moving along and getting so close. And we would like to have a presentation at the next March meeting. As also, we will be, between now and then, most likely getting proposals for our community choice aggregation for electricity purchases for the community. And we did get an update last week that they are very close to being able to give us some prices. So that's one thing. The other is that I am on a committee that was formed by the supervisor in the town to oversee the Hamlet Revitalization Program. And we did issue RFPs to engineering and planning firms. We did receive 3 proposals, which we are in the process of reviewing and are interviewing the 3 companies next week. And hopefully an award by the end of the month.
Thank you very much. Trustee Brooke, any opening comments?
No comment.
Trustee Scherer, any opening comments?
None from me. Thank you.
Trustee Shaw, any opening comments? You're on mute, Trustee Shaw.
No immediate comment, except that I just want to make sure that we have a vote today about the 4-lane thing. And I might have to drop off at some point, so I just wanted to make sure that did people get what they needed for that from 4-lane proposal for additional whatever training hours for the village?
I'm not aware of anything. I haven't received anything from them. I don't think I have, unless I missed it in my email.
So it's the same thing that that Beth sent like a couple of months ago. I think it's $2,500 to continue training for reports and teaching how to do reports and things. I don't know, John, were you able to get that? Because as you all know, I don't have my village email on I couldn't do it on my iPad. Do you guys have any of that?
It was for 10 hours, is that right? That's what I saw.
Correct.
Elizabeth, do you have the quote on that?
No, I don't have it with me, no.
Okay.
I have the email here. $2,500 on as needed basis to provide support for questions as they come up working with the new file, so we can secure the training support is specified to your needs.
Okay.
And that relates,
That's
Trustee Shaw, that relates to the budget and accounting?
I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
What's the training for, Trustee Shaw, so the public's aware what
It's,
we're referring to?
oh, it's for transitioning from the QuickBooks Online to the desktop version. And it's basically training on the desktop version.
All right, we'll add it to the agenda at the end, Trustee Shaw.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, now it's time for public comment. So we'll start with the members of the public who are present. Professor Hayes, would you like to take the podium?
I would just like to pick up on what the Deputy Mayor Lindsay said about our Climate Smart program. I think most of you are aware that this village has joined thousands of municipalities across the state in an effort and commitment to reduce our greenhouse gases and meet the state's goals of 40% reduction by the end of this decade and an 80 or 85% reduction by 2050. These are bold goals, but many communities across the state are involved in trying to commit to these. In order to do this, as you know, we've established we did an inventory of greenhouse gas emissions for both the village government operations and the community at large beyond the village government. That was published, or that was actually submitted to the board in June of 2022. I did this with Skylar Newhouser, and in that inventory allows us to establish a baseline for which we can compare we can measure any reductions that we've made. It also allows us to establish, to understand what are the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions and how can we most efficiently meet the reduction targets. In April of 2023, the BOT authorized the development of a climate action plan for village government operations. This basically would lay out a plan for a series of implementations that would reduce the gases. Last fall, John Ledwith and I submitted an annual report for the year 2022, in which we, among other things, said things that have been done during the year, but we also laid out possible actions that could reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by on the order of close to 40% by the end of this decade. I recently looked, just today, in fact, I looked over that annual report, and what I think I will do is put all those suggestions and the reductions all on one piece of paper. So I thought that if the mayor is willing, that we could spend, and Deputy Mayor Lindsay's already proposed it, that we spend some time at the March meeting looking at these reductions and looking at the proposed ways to reduce the emissions. It really needs to be a BOT plan, and it is a plan that can extend from now until the end of the decade. So it doesn't have to all be done at once. It can be done incrementally. It's basically long-term planning.
Thank you, Professor. As Deputy Mayor Lindsay indicated, she's going to introduce that at the March meeting. It'll be on the agenda at that time. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Mr. Lynch.
Good evening. At our last meeting of the Board of Architectural Review, we had a chance to discuss the agenda item regarding the landscaper licensing wall and had some feedback that we'd like to present to the Board of Trustees. And I think I see Chris on. He may have some comments on mechanicals and weed blowers afterwards. I think he'd like to add on. So the current structure of the way that landscapers operate in the park is that at the beginning of the springtime, they're given a pamphlet. I checked with Officer Conklin.
Chief Conklin.
I'm sorry?
Chief Conklin.
Apologies,
Yeah.
Chief Conklin.
Yeah. He's on.
I spoke with Chief Conklin and he verified that these have been being given out at the beginning of each year, and that does explain the rules and the violations for doing so. My understanding is that we're suggesting putting in a small fee, $150 or $200 fee, and then it would remove, if someone violated that, it would remove their ability to work within the park. It's our fear that that will not be effective in that we currently give out the rules and $150 is a substantial fee that will stop people from cutting down trees. I've done a bit of research into municipalities that have taken preserving their old growth trees seriously. And what I would suggest doing, and what they have found successful, is creating a separate building permit, much like someone would approach Mr. Ledwith for a building permit, a specific tree permit. That way that the onus is on the homeowner as opposed to the landscaper, and setting very large fee for violating. Other municipalities have gone as high as $10,000 a tree. I think that might be a bit much, but it would certainly be more of a deterrence than $150. If we leave the onus on the landscapers, what that will only accomplish is reducing the already restricted number of people who work in the park and creating higher costs for homeowners. And I believe that is that we have. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any other members of the public wish to speak on any issue of interest? That's fine. We'll now move to the Zoom callers. Ms. Chuyen Hempel, your hand is up.
Yes.
Chuyen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have two letters that two neighbors have asked me to read into the minutes, and also I have my own comments, so bear with me for a bit. The first letter is from Joe McCann of 112 and 114 Turtle Point Road. Joe writes to Tuxedo Park Board of Trustees, greetings. I'm writing in support of a law on licensing landscapers. I think it would benefit residents, but also importantly, benefit landscapers themselves. Licensing levels the playing field. The good contractor who plays by the rules will no longer fear being undercut by the bad guy who doesn't. It brings fairness to the process by putting everybody's on the same page. Anne and I have lived in Tuxedo Park for nearly 40 years. I believe licensing, properly administered, will raise standards and benefit all. The second letter I've been asked to read is from Elizabeth Cotenoir of Westlake Stable Road. To the Board of Trustees, I support a licensing agreement for landscapers who work in our village. Many communities in our area and across the country require landscapers to adhere to their local code that regulates and restricts what can and can't be done and how, so as to protect and sustain their local environment in support of biodiversity, clean air, and clean water. Licensing fee can be nominal, but there should be a signed acknowledgement of the rules. Many of us have had personal experiences with landscapers working beyond permitted hours, blowing leaves into the lake, installing invasives as plantings, among other careless practices. We already have landscaping rules in our village code governing their activities. We must now enforce them. And that's the end of Elizabeth's comment, and I'd like to add my own, if I may. I too support a law on licensing landscapers, and Tuxedo Park would not be breaking any new grounds in making such a law. Princeton, Village of East Hampton, Village of Southampton, Village of Garden City, just to name a few examples, require their landscape contractors to be licensed to ensure the quality of their work, to protect the homeowners, and to enforce their existing laws. Tuxedo Park has already got laws governing landscaping activities, but they are often ignored. I believe licensing will be an effective means of enforcing our existing code, because a signed legal document will surely get the attention of the landscape company owners, who will then want to manage closely their workers to adhere to our local code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hempel. Next up was Ms. Bremen. You had your hand up. Oh,
Yes. Unmute.
Unmute yourself.
Can you unmute yourself?
there we
There
go.
you are.
Okay, great. I don't know, I was trying to. Okay. Yes, my name is Pam Bremen and I live at 55 Mountain Farm Road. And I too am in support of licensing the landscapers, and I have a letter that I'd like to submit into the minutes as well. Dear members of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Tuxedo Park and neighbors, I am writing to support the law on the licensing of landscapers working in our village. I am a member of the Tuxedo Park Garden Club. I am also a member of the Garden Club of Orange and Dutchess Counties, a charter member of the Garden Club of America, or the GCA. The GCA is a volunteer organization of 18,000 volunteer members, 200 clubs, and comprises committees on national legislation, conservation, horticulture, and civic improvement, to name just a few. In a few weeks, I'll be in Washington, D.C. with Deputy Mayor Lindsay, by the way, with approximately 300 members of the GCA, meeting with state legislators, including Senator Gillibrand and Leader Schumer, to advocate for nonpartisan environmental legislation. I include this only because it is through my association with the GCA that I have had access to a rich education that has taught me how important it is to protect our environment right down to our own neighborhoods. I view the licensing of our landscapers as a step in further partnering with our landscapers as we work together to protect this lovely village. They are not being asked to do anything that we as residents are not asked to do. We are all simply being asked to abide by our village codes. Respectfully submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bremen. I think Mr. Gao was next in line.
Good evening. Yes, Christopher Gao, and the first part on behalf of my colleagues at the Board of Architectural Review, we discussed the merits of a landscaper license at our last meeting on February the 4th, and unanimously agreed that it was a very good idea. I would encourage the BOT to discuss and refine this initiative. My personal perspective is about communication. The rules and regulations, on the licensing permit, if they're printed out and made available for everybody in English and Spanish, and with an introduction explaining why we have these rules. Because a worker may have just come from cleaning up a landscape around a gas station with dyed red mulch mountains, or from a golf course applying large amounts of fertilizer and insecticide. So if we have an introduction about that, we have a lake that is our drinking water, and we're in between two state parks, to give that worker a little bit more of a context of why this place is so special and why we have these laws. Also, the printed version could help the workers when they're asked by a homeowner to do certain things that are breaking the code, that they can have something to back them up and say, I'm sorry, no, we cannot do that. And often it's misunderstanding or not being aware of these rules and regulations. So yeah, personally, I'm very much for it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. Ms. Hanson, I believe you're next.
Good evening, everybody. Joanne Hanson, 92 Mountain Farm Road. And I'm also speaking in favor of the proposed landscape licensing regulation law. I think that it is valuable to do at a low cost. And I think lower, or at least the numbers that were circulating were lower than the ones discussed this evening. But I would add what other people have already said, is this is to enforce laws that are existing on our books already, and to make sure that the people who are working and their staff in the park know what those rules are. I'm not sure that passing out at the police station is perhaps the most effective approach. I think the having to obtain a license and sign it, and at that time be given the regulations might be a more effective approach. I'm the chair of the planning board, but I am speaking in my personal context. At the time that a law is completely drafted, I think then the planning board would review it. But that is a key part of our obligations to Tuxedo Park, is to enforce the existing rules, to maintain the quality of the community that we have, particularly as it relates to the quality of our lakes. If people are using inappropriate chemicals, they end up down in the lake. They cause us a great deal of money to try and counteract those difficulties. So speaking in my personal context, I'm very much in favor of having a mechanism to enforce the laws that are already on the books.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Would anybody else like to speak publicly about any issue? It doesn't have to be a landscape or licensing. Any other person on the Zoom? Okay. Yes, Professor.
I was confused because I thought we were going to discuss landscaping under old business.
We are.
Are we going to do it again?
Yeah, we're going to do it again.
I have a letter to read from.
Please, why don't you read it now, Professor? Since everybody else has addressed that issue, it would seem to make the most sense. You know, public comment is on anything. It just, everybody seemed to be addressing the same issue tonight, but you can talk about anything you want.
Yes, this is a letter from Mrs. Jill Swerble, and it reads as follows. To the Village of Tuxedo Park Board of Trustees. I'm writing to express my strong support for the proposed draft law to license landscapers within our village. As a lifelong resident of this beautiful lake community, I am deeply invested in preserving our unique ecosystem and maintaining the natural beauty that defines our environment. With increased development and landscaping activity, I believe implementing this licensing agreement is crucial to achieve these goals and ultimately benefit our entire community. Enforcement of existing regulations. Our current landscaping regulations offer valuable guidance for protecting our local ecosystem. However, effective enforcement remains a challenge. A licensing system would establish a clear pathway to accountability, ensuring that all landscapers operating within our village are familiar with and adhere to these regulations. This in turn would minimize instances of improper practices like harmful and excessive tree removal and soil erosion, as well as lack of adherence to noise levels guidelines, all of which contribute to the degradation of our environment, protecting our ecosystem and lake. Our lake and its surrounding ecosystem are not only integral to our community's character, but also vital to our well-being. These improper landscaping practices have had a detrimental effect on our water quality, riparian buffers, wildlife habitats, and overall environmental health. By requiring landscapers to demonstrate knowledge of sustainable practices and adherence to regulations, we can significantly reduce these harmful impacts. This will ensure that long-term health of our lake and surrounding ecosystem, preserving its beauty and ecological value for generations to come, building trust and confidence. Implementing a licensing system will create a framework for trust and confidence between landscapers, residents, and the village boards. Licensed professionals will be demonstrably qualified and accountable, providing residents with peace of mind. Simultaneously, our village boards will be equipped with a transparent and easily managed method for oversight, fostering a collaborative environment where responsible landscaping practices are encouraged and supported. In conclusion, I urge that to wholeheartedly support the draft law for licensing landscapers in our village. This move signifies a proactive approach to safeguarding our precious ecosystem and our lakes while ensuring professionalism and accountability within our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Jill Swerble.
Thank you, Ms. Swerble. Thank you, Professor, for reading that.
I would just like to add just something to that, and that is that the village code needs to be enforced, and that's something that has proved difficult to do in the area of landscaping. And part of the problem is violations occur, damage is done, and then the village is left with punishing. And fines have usually been nominal. Litigation is expensive and unpleasant between the village government and the residents, and this just hasn't worked. The proposed licensing agreement, which is before us, I think is a much better approach because it will be preventative. In other words, instead of punishing people after they cut down trees, it will prevent the trees from being cut down in the first place, because the landscapers will not want to risk losing their right to work in the park. And I think that I think they just won't do it. And I definitely think it's worth a try. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Just as a follow-up, because there's been reference to, and by the way, is that your phone, sir? Yeah. Okay. As a follow, there were references made to the police officers at the booth handing out the law, so to speak, to the landscapers each spring when they began their work. I've received correspondence from Chief Conklin today that I would like to read in the record. Good afternoon. As discussed in the January BOT meeting, the police department hands out the attached list of village codes to landscapers in the spring each year to advise them of the applicable village codes. I don't believe it is effective, and enforcement from the building department, code enforcement, should be increased to see any results. So the chief himself has expressed an opinion that merely handing out 3 or 4 sheets of paper at the beginning of the season is really not efficient to enforce the village law. So with that being said, is there any additional comment from the public on this or any other matter? I will close public comment for the first session. Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to reports, oral and written. The court report is attached to the agenda. So now for the second report, I turn to our retiring police chief, Dave Conklin. Police Chief Conklin, thank you so much for your service to the village. Feel free to appear in person, because I'm going to ask anyone who wishes to speak directly to you to thank you for all you've done over the last 4 years. So would it be possible for us to see your smiling face?
I don't have camera capability. I'm sorry.
Okay.
On my computer.
Then you'll have to listen to the tributes by audio. Go ahead, sir, on your report.
Okay, thank you. So our January report, we responded to 188 calls for service. We had 3 property damage accidents. We issued 6 traffic tickets and 17 warning tickets. We had 4 intrusion alarm calls or burglary alarms, 2 medical calls. We were assisted by the town of Tuxedo Police once. We patrolled 2,654 miles, and the count of cars coming through the gates is estimated at 556 per day. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Now, the second item on the agenda with respect to you is listed as tributes and thanks by trustees, members of the board, and members of the public. So I will turn first to the deputy mayor for any comments she may have to you personally.
Well, thank you, Chief, for your years of service here, protecting the park and our residents, and I wish you all the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Brooke.
My thanks as well. I sent him a personal note, so there's no reason to say it here, but
Okay, thank you, Trustee Brooke. Trustee Scherer.
I think I made my views pretty clear at the last board meeting, so I won't repeat them. But Chief, you're going to be missed. You were a great addition to the park.
Thank you.
Trustee Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Chief, for everything you've done, and I mostly the cohesiveness that you've brought to the police department. So thank you for that contribution to the village of Tuxedo Park.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Shaw. Any members of the public wish to speak directly to Chief Conklin? Well, I'd like, on behalf of the entire village, I would like to thank you for your service, sir. While we've never met in person, I have appreciated the assistance you provided to me in my brief tenure as mayor. You've served the village honorably, and you will be missed. And we wish you all the best in your retirement and in any endeavors in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees, for your kind words. I appreciate it. I enjoyed working for the village. It was a great experience.
Thank you, sir. John, would you have anything to add to that?
Yes, if I could, Chief, this is John Ledwith. I would like to say that in my 29 years of being here at the village, I think you've really done the best as far as maintaining the management, maintaining the budget, and doing it slowly and quietly, as many of our former trustees would like things to be done.
Thank you, John.
And last, our village clerk, are you there?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. I have worked with the chief before the village of Tuxedo Park, and I've always enjoyed it. I can't believe he's going. I just can't. I'm really going to miss you, Chief Conklin. You were a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to work with.
Thank you. I feel the same.
All the best, Chief. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next, we move on to the DPW supervisor. Jeff, you have the floor.
Okay, we plowed and salted roads January 19th, 20th, and February 13th and 17th. We've been filling in potholes with cold asphalt. We repaired a large washout on Tuxedo Road down towards the front gate. Removed fallen trees on Ledge Lane, East Lake Road, and one at the sewer plant. We repaired a catch basin on East Lake Road. We washed and cleaned all the trucks after the snow events, and also we've been doing a lot of work on the trucks and maintenance in between. Cleaned drains and catch basins, cut back brush along Pawtucket Road and the access road to Pawtucket Water Tank. We removed logs from the elephant pit down by the racetrack to take measurements to put in a permanent cover on that. It's kind of dangerous the way it is now with the logs on it.
Just on that point, are we gonna get a prefabbed concrete cover? Is that the?
John is working on getting some prices.
Okay, all right, great, good.
We repaired a 1-inch water leak service line on Tower Hill Loop. We also had a 6-inch water main break on Turtle Point Road last weekend. Did various water meter readings. We installed a new chemical line at the water plant that had been giving us trouble for a couple of weeks now. So we just replaced the whole thing. So it seems to be, everything seems to be working fine now. We oversaw a new water tap for the old Gulf station downtown. They tapped into our main on Route 17. We also had a tree rip the electric line off of our Mountain Farm water pumping station. So I had Sterling Electric come and reattach it to the building, so that's been taken care of. And that's about it.
Well, you, sounds like you guys have been very busy over the last month. That's for sure. I mean, we certainly appreciate it. Next, we have the Building Land Use and Advisor to the Board, John Ledwith.
Yes, we had 5 certificate of occupancies issued during the month of February. There's still a fair amount of real estate activity going on through the winter. Most of the larger projects are proceeding as planned. We did have 2 oil tanks leak, 44 Tower Hill Road and also 80 Crow's Nest Road. So I would like to advise people that if they do have an older tank, whether it's above ground or below ground, have it inspected and consider having it, removed and possibly placed above ground to eliminate soil contamination around the reservoir. The DEC was notified in both of these instances, and companies licensed to do remediation have been employed to remediate both of these sites. Working a little bit with the Climate Smart Task Force. We've been getting some estimates, which I'd like to speak to the board about maybe later, regarding the roof repairs that were damaged about a month and a half ago, and several other things here, including working on the racetrack committee to provide a safer access point for the drains, as Jeff alluded to. So that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Water Department report is attached. There are requests within that report from various residents who are seeking reimbursement for sewer charges, which the board will discuss with respect to the specific residents in executive session. I think there were maybe 3 or 4. There's a handful of people who are seeking requests for reimbursement or refunds for various reasons. So we will address those in executive session. Treasurer report, Ms. Village Clerk Dougherty, you have the floor.
Well, they are attached for the record. I was going to, when we get up to audit of claims and budget, describe, give more information on those.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. The next item is approval of the January 17, 2024 regular meeting. Has everyone on the board had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes?
No.
Okay. And would you prefer if we postpone this till the March meeting, Trustee Shaw? Trustee Shaw?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
please,
all right.
if we could.
Certainly. We'll table and move this on to the agenda for the March meeting. We'll move on to the next item. Okay, so now we get to old business. Continue.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we usually do a motion on the reports. and
Oh,
approve.
thank you. I have that. Right. I appreciate that. I move the following. Be it resolved that the board add all written reports to the permanent record. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by the deputy mayor. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Carried unanimously. Thank you,
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Hey, let me make a suggestion on the minutes issue. Since four of us have approved it and Tinka wants to do it, I suggest we approve it subject to Tinka's concurrence, so it doesn't have to come before us again. If she has to change, we could change it. That way it's approved.
I don't think that's the right approach. I think if one of the members of the board has not, for whatever reason, seen the minutes, that we should honor her request that we put it off, because it's not absolutely essential that we approve the minutes today. Jared, if you're there, do you have any opinion on that? Or Brian? Any lawyer?
Hi, yeah, hi, sorry, I had to unmute. It's Brian. Jared is away. He was on the meeting earlier, but he's away. No, you should either, it should be a simple motion to approve tonight or a motion to approve next time. There's no need to have the following concurrence. It should be done in one meeting and that's it.
Okay, I'll make the command decision that we kick this over to March in deference to trustee Shaw and the fact that she hasn't had a chance to see it. Okay, so landscaper licensing. Now, Mr. Stoller, I know there's a procedure we have to utilize to introduce a local law. And since it's the first time in my administration we're moving forward on a landscaper licensing law, the proposed chapter 67 of local law, I'd like you to guide us through the process at this point in terms of the introduction of the draft law that you put together, and then the resolution to set forth a public hearing next month.
Okay, very simple. Assuming that it's been on the desk of all members of the board, you can tonight, as you said, schedule a public hearing on this law for the next meeting. That's all you need to do. Then the rest of it takes care of itself. The notice will be published, the law will be made available online and to all the members of the public. And that's it. Then you'll have your hearing next month. It is not a zoning law, so it's not something that has to be referred to the planning commission. You're the only entity that has any jurisdiction over this. So just tonight, if everybody has had it on their desk, schedule it for a public hearing for next month, and it's all you need to do.
Okay, that's great. I have one question. Over the next month,
Sure.
are we permitted to accept comments or make amendments to the proposed law for a final draft to be submitted to the public at the time of the public hearing? Or do those amendments have to be made at or after the public hearing?
So if those amendments are substantive and not just to correct the textual error, for instance, you would have to put it off for the following meeting and renotice the hearing if there are changes that are made. I would point out, though, that if there's some urgency, because, for instance, we're talking about a landscape law, and we're now already into April and the landscape season, you could also, if there are changes, declare that there is an emergency reason for adopting it with the revisions without having to go to another hearing. So you could do it either way.
Okay, let me just be more specific. I included a requirement that the landscapers produce insurance, proof of insurance for motor vehicles and for general liability. I should also have included workers' compensation coverage for their employees, and that is not contained within the statute. That would be the only addition I would make. Can we do that tonight, or do we have to put that off?
Well, here's the question. Does the law, I don't have it in front of me and I'm driving right now.
Sure.
Does the law contain a provision that you can request any additional information that would be appropriate or necessary? Because if that's the case, then you're covered and you can change this at any time in the future.
Yeah, I can't tell you. You drafted it. I can't tell you that I know if that's specifically contained. I know.
All right, so I'll be back at a desk in about 10 minutes. I'll be able to look and let you know the answer to that.
Okay. All right. So, but as we're sitting here now, we can't add workers' compensation coverage as an additional requirement of proof for a licensing.
If I could make the revisions and circulate it to everybody while you're sitting there and before you schedule it, it will be sufficient. So most likely it's not going to matter. I'll add it. Is there any specific amount of coverage or just workers' compensation as determined by the village?
Yeah, just proof of workers' compensation. We want, at least from my perspective, I want to know that, landscaping can be a dangerous activity, and that any employer that has landscapers working in the village, those folks are covered in the event they suffer an injury on the job. And I think that's an important element of approving insurance. So I'd like that added. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
You got it. I'll let you know. You got it.
Okay. So we'll address this later on in the meeting to give him time to get back to his office, and we can, of course, discuss it with members of the board. Like to discuss the issue of landscaper licensing and the proposed local law number 1.
Yes, I would.
Go ahead.
Are you then going to include all architects, any contractors, and everybody else is going to have to get licensing? And also, I mean, I just think it's opening a whole can of worms. I mean, I personally think it's not right to, expand the powers of the government. And if you're going to do it for landscapers, I mean, everybody else should be under the same thing. As it is, I think we're well aware that there is a particular house that things have been done contrary to the village law, and nothing's happened. So that's my comment. I don't agree with licensing. I think it's just making things much more difficult to do business in the village. And so those are my comments.
Trustee Brooke?
Yeah, it's been so long since I reviewed the document. And I think we have adequate laws on the books, so I'm not sure what the focus is here. And we did talk about size of enterprise. So if a local kid wants to cut lawns as a way of making some cash, does he have to get licensed, even though he's just doing, it's a two-person operation, two brothers who want to cut lawns. So I just want to review the document, which we'll have a chance to do at the public hearing, and any changes to come out of that, we can incorporate into it. I'm generally in concurrence, which I don't think the situation is particularly destructive or bad as it exists. I think it works pretty well. I personally don't see the need for additional legislation and expenses, which all get passed on to the residents. So my attitude is, let's circulate it, let's look at it, schedule a public hearing, and then we can make the final changes from there. You don't need the changes, for instance, insurance. You don't need those changes to circulate it and do the hearing. That if those issues are brought up at the hearing and we elect to put them in, they can be put in there before the law is passed. Right? It doesn't have to be done, tonight and, seat of the pants.
Trustee Scherer, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree with most of the commentary that was provided earlier as part of the record, either letters that were written or general comments. My view is that to the extent we're not really changing the rules and regulations, we may be touching them up. This is really about enforcement. And what's being proposed is actually, in my mind, fairly straightforward and not disruptive. You have the landscapers sign a piece of paper. And by the way, Trustee Brooke, in your example of the two brothers cutting a lawn should be an easy piece of paper to sign. You basically just say you're going to abide by the rules and regulations of Tuxedo Park. And that is going to give, as was mentioned earlier, the owners of those companies pause before they allow their workers to come into the park and use prohibited chemicals, blow leaves into the lake, take other actions that could hurt our local environment. We've all been working very hard to protect our lakes, and it's no easy task. But this is, I think, a step in the right direction. And I think it's a fairly straightforward and easy step. And it's really not about raising money for the park. It would be a nominal licensing fee. It's really about having someone sign their signature to a piece of paper that says that they understand what the rules and regulations are. And by the way, they're not particularly onerous. They understand what they are. If they choose to break them, or if they inadvertently break them, then we can determine as a board what the punishment is. It may be they lose their license and ability to work in the park. It may be they get a slap on the wrist, but at least it gives people pause before they do anything that is inappropriate. And the parties that I'm particularly worried about, candidly, aren't the small contractors. It's the big national companies that, we're just not that important to them. Maybe, they don't want to bother to even know what our rules and regulations are. But as soon as people sign a piece of paper, they focus. And that's all this is about. I really don't think this should be a controversial issue. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Sher. Deputy Mayor Lindsay?
Yes, thank you. I agree with the letters and comments that were made earlier, and I think trustee Sher presented a good reasoning for having this licensing. I think that the fee will be nominal and it won't be something onerous on the residents. That is not the intention. And it does put us in the right direction to be able to enforce our code, but also to educate our residents who maybe are not aware of the codes that we do have. And this is a step in that right direction. And maybe we need to even think a little bit more separate from the law, licensing law, about educating our residents a little bit better about what our codes are.
Mayor, I'm sorry, do you mind if I add?
Sure.
So my long time, I've been in the park, not as long as many of you. I've been in the park though for a while. I've owned my property since 2010. I've always used the same landscaper. Many of you know who this person is. Easy to find out who it is. And Mayor, as you know, I was adamant that rather than us as officials sitting behind a desk and residents who have a perspective, I encouraged you and the rest of the board to get the perspective of the landscapers to make sure we weren't doing anything that actually would be disruptive to their businesses. So I had a conversation with my landscaper. I invited the mayor to talk with him as well. And Mayor, I believe you did yesterday. And for what it's worth, this person is supportive of a licensing fee. It's one data point. Maybe he has ulterior motives. Maybe he wants to, push other landscapers out of the park. I personally don't think that's the case. I think he's been in the park for probably 3 decades, and from my perspective, only has the best of intentions, and is very protective of this park. So for what it's worth, the one data point I have from a landscaper is supportive of a licensing fee structure.
All right, thank you, trustee Sher. As I said, until Brian reaches his office, I will not move to schedule the public hearing. We'll do that a little later on so he can answer my question. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of appointment of Deputy Chief Al Faust of the Town of Goshen Police Department as the new police chief of Tuxedo Park. As the chair of the search committee, I'm turning this item over to Deputy Mayor Lindsay, who will conduct this particular item, discuss this particular item, and make the appropriate resolution.
Thank you. And I want to thank the search committee for coming to all the meetings and interviewing and all the great input that led us to this decision. So Alan Faust, as the mayor said earlier, is currently the deputy chief in the town of Goshen. And he's been a police officer in Goshen since 1994. He was police sergeant in 2002 before becoming the deputy chief. He also had such duties as being the officer in charge. He did attend the police academy with our Chief Conklin, who had a lot of great things to say about him. And some of the other things that Alan Faust has done as deputy chief in Goshen is he's been the grant administrator, the fleet manager, the training coordinator. He's supervised the evidence rooms, and he's been the media relations officer. and integrity officer. So he has many different roles that will be really well suited for our police force. He has attended the FBI Academy, and I'll just hold up some of the other trainings that he has received under the Department of Homeland Security. So I think we are looking forward to having him join the force, and I know that with his connection with our Chief Conklin, that there'll be a very good transition. So I have a resolution here.
Well,
Or
I'd
would
like
you
to add
more
to this,
discussion?
assuming the resolution passes, that we will schedule an open house and a meet the chief evening. So residents and members of the board and anyone who wants to come will get to meet our new police chief in the very near future. We'll work it out so it's convenient for everybody. So please proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, so Mayor's asked me to read this out loud. In accordance with Village Law 4401C, generally the mayor is authorized to appoint department heads, including the chief of police, subject to approval by the Board of Trustees. However, the Village Code 18.2 provides that the appointment of the chief of police is to be made by the board. So that is why we are having this resolution and asking the board to vote. A resolution appointing and approving the employment of Alan M. Faust Jr. as the Chief of Police of the Village Tuxedo Park. Whereas the mayor and board of trustees have conducted a thorough search for a chief of police for the Village of Tuxedo Park, and whereas the mayor and board find that Alan M. Faust Jr. has demonstrated that he has the requisite qualifications, knowledge, training, and experience to perform the duties and responsibilities of chief of police. And whereas the mayor and the board find it to be in the best interests of the village for the preservation of public safety, peace, and welfare of the residents of the village, that said appointment and employment be approved and confirmed. And whereas the appointment of the chief of police is to be made by the board in accordance with Village Code 18-2. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board, it will be resolved. Let's see, how do I make this a motion? I'd like to make the motion that the board appoints Alan M. Faust Jr. as the chief of police of the Village of Tuxedo Park. And I'd like to further make the motion that Alan M. Faust shall receive compensation of $35,000 per year and benefits due him in accordance with New York State law, as further provided in an employment agreement between Alan M. Faust Jr. and the village in a form approved by the village attorney. And I'd also make a motion that it be further resolved that the appointment shall be effective upon the completion of any predicate requirements, including the filing of an oath of office, and shall run through the balance of the 2023-24 official year and the 2024-25 official year. And I'd like to make the motion that the board authorizes the mayor to execute the employment agreement on approval by the village attorney as to form. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no,
Paul.
doesn't matter.
Okay,
Second
Paul.
by trustee Brooke.
Okay, any further discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, Elizabeth,
Thank you.
5-0. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Can we just, can I just ask a question if Brian Stoller, if he is back on, because he sent an email saying that he was having trouble?
Go on.
Okay.
When I went from my car to here, I got knocked off, but I'm good now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. All right, next item is one that we've tried in the past 2 or 3 times. Website accessibility discussion audio eye. This is for the benefit of persons with disabilities. Do we have that?
No, I gave up on that and I had sent the board members, I sent an email. I guess I sent the link to the board members so that everybody could look at it on their own.
All right,
So should we table it till next month?
Table it till next month. I
Okay.
don't recall receiving that, but okay, we'll table it.
Okay,
All right, the next item of old business, the final item, authorize the mayor to sign a municipal advisor services agreement with Munistat. Deputy Mayor, you're familiar with this. Could you just give us a brief overview?
Yeah, this Munistat was the firm that was employed by the village during the bond issuance, and this
For the
fee
dam.
for the dam,
Yep.
and this fee that has to be paid annually. So
And they provide official paperwork that's
yeah,
required.
they file it.
They file paperwork, and it's essential that the paperwork be filed, because if it's not, the bondholders can call the bond, and that's something we don't want. So we need that paperwork filed, and we need to have an agreement with them to continue that process. Any questions from anybody? No? Okay, let me read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize Mayor Citron to sign the service agreement with Munistat. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, Elizabeth. All right, now we move on to new business. Let me make some opening remarks on new business. There are two quality of life issues that I placed on the new business agenda for this month. And I placed them on the agenda because since I've become mayor, and even before I was mayor, these are the two issues I received the most telephone calls about from residents. And those issues are, one, at-large dogs or unattended dogs, and two, Sunday deliveries. So this particular item, a discussion of unattended dogs in public, I'd like to read, to start this discussion, from the village code. Section 32-3 of the village code, under the title Animals, is captioned Dogs at Large. Section A reads, dogs are permitted to run free within the village, provided that, one, no more than 2 dogs owned by or in the custody of one family shall be permitted loose off the property of their owners at any given time. Each dog allowed to run free is known to be non-vicious and rabies-free. The owner assumes full responsibility for his dog's safety and actions on public and private property. And finally, there is no outstanding prohibition from any village board or official. As I said, this is the #1 in good weather primarily complaint that I receive, that people who are walking, jogging, riding their bicycles around the lakes, on the trails, are confronted by unattended dogs. And when I say unattended dogs, I don't mean off-leash dogs. We're not here to talk about dogs that are walked by their owners off-leash. We're here to talk about unattended dogs, because the code provides that you can let your dog out in the morning, wish him or her well, and hopefully they'll come back at night. And what they do during the course of the day is unknown to you. And I myself have driven around the village and seen these dogs, and I have called the police and said, there's a lost dog. It's running free. And the response I get from the police is appropriate based upon the code, which is, I'm sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do because the dogs are permitted to run free through the village. We all love our dogs. I have dogs. Most people in this village probably have or had dogs in the past. And we have a tradition of allowing our dogs to walk free as we walk through the park, whether it's on the trails or on the streets. But the question becomes, and I now put it to the board and to the public, because this is an important issue, should we allow dogs to run unattended through the village because they can frighten people, The person who's walking around the lake has no idea whose dog it is. The person who's walking around Tuxedo Lake has no idea what that dog's going to do when it approaches. And quite frankly, should there be an incident where the dog either jumps on the person or, God forbid, bites the person, there's no accountability because there's no owner walking behind the dog. The dog runs off and you'll never know who it was, whose dog it was that knocked you to the ground. So should this law be changed? I personally believe that we should amend this law so that dogs can be walked unleashed, but dogs cannot wander free through the village at their leisure. I'll open it up to the board, and then, as I said during my first meeting, we want public input on this point. So we're not going to take any action today. We're just going to begin the discussion, and we'll see if we can get a consensus, because I expect this is going to be a relatively controversial proposal with people on both sides. So we'll start with members of the board. Deputy Mayor, how do you feel about dogs at large within the village of Tuxedo Park?
Well, personally, I am always a little apprehensive if I'm walking alone and I see a dog, especially down by the Westlake Causeway. So, I don't know how often it happens. You say you've heard complaints, but
I get complaints. I have not had any reports of people being attacked or bitten, but I get calls from people who are very disturbed by the fact that this big dog is approaching them. They don't know how to respond. They don't know how the dog will respond. And there's no owner anywhere in sight to call that dog back. And these are calls I get all the time. So, this is sort of a preventative proposal, because how long can we continue to have this system, or how long have we had this system? I don't know whether people even report the fact that they've been in quotes attacked by these wandering dogs. But it's an unusual, I have to say, from my perspective, it seems rather unusual that we allow dogs to just wander throughout an inhabited village like this. So,
well, I look forward to hearing from the public.
yeah, it's very important to hear from
Yeah.
the public. So, Trustee Brooke, what's your
I
feeling
know
about
of
this?
no cases where people have been bitten, people are scared for whatever reason, but I think the existing law is adequate, and I'm just a great believer that the laws are adequate. You don't fix a problem if it's not broken. If a dog bites somebody, the dog has an owner, there's a lawsuit, and that person who owns the dog can be sued.
Of course, but
But
what if you can't identify the owner because the dog doesn't have its owner? The dog is wandering free.
It has a collar. Well, you want my opinion is,
Yeah.
my opinion is the existing law is adequate. You're out here in the country, dogs should be able to run loose. Somebody's walking their dog and the dog chases something into the woods. Suddenly it's defined as, a different situation. I think the existing law is adequate because there've been no problems other than people being afraid of snakes or dogs or,
Bears.
Mm.
Trustee Scherer, you're up next.
Yeah, we should regulate the bears. Listen, I don't have strong feelings about this. I think I personally would really like to hear from the public. Having said that, I think when you hear from the public, you're going to hear from the people that probably want to change the rules. So I'm not sure it's going to be a balanced discussion. Having said that, you said something, Mayor, that resonated with me, which is it almost feels a little archaic that we have laws in place that allow dogs to roam freely. Can't imagine there are many communities where that's actually permitted. And so listen, I'm like I said, I have a cat. I have owned dogs in the past, but and my cat doesn't roam very far, so I know he's not scaring anyone. But yeah, listen, I'd love to hear from the public. Don't have particularly strong views, candidly.
Thank you. Trustee Shaw? Are you with us, Trustee Shaw? Well, we'll come back to her if she's able to regain contact. Any members of the public in the room have any particular thoughts? Because this is really an issue that affects all of us. Anybody have anything to say on this particular point of dogs at large? Okay. Anybody on Zoom want to chime in on this issue for discussion purposes? Any feelings one way or another about whether we should change the law? Okay, well then,
Yep.
do we have a hand? Yes, Chu Yen Hempel.
Mayor, this is Chirian Hempel, 14 Butternut Road. I'm really not qualified to comment, but what I suggest is that maybe you should hear from parents who have young children and who walk with their young children around the lake and on trails and see what they think about. I don't have children, and I don't have a dog. I have a cat, like Trustee Scherer, and my cat doesn't frighten anybody. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I think what we'll do is, like, when I send the mayor's message out, I hope most of you get it. If you don't, please give Denise your email. I'll put a question to everyone and we'll see what kind of feedback we get. Because the more feedback we get from the residents, I mean, if every resident responded, it would be great. We get a sense of whether we should change the law or not. So we'll move on to the next topic and we'll just put this question out to the public generally over the next month or two. Yes.
Has there been any, where dogs are attacking other dogs? I mean, it's not just dog-human, but what about dog-dog interactions?
I've heard, yes, I've heard of dog interaction, but I cannot say that the dog that was wandering and unattended, which attacked an either leashed or escorted dog, was the aggressor. I'm not in a position to say that. But I have been told that, you know, as people walking around the lake with their dogs, they've had interactions with other dogs, but I don't have enough details to really make a representation on that. Okay, thank you all very much. We'll follow up with that over the next few months. The discussion of the local law on fences is tabled based on my earlier statement at the beginning of the meeting. The next item, renewal of the CDPHP dental plan, vision plan, MWG, and medical insurance plan, MVP, including discussion of adult children to age 30 rider rates. Now, I know, Elizabeth, if you would talk about this, I know the police, have a different health plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And can I just begin by saying there was a mistake in that, very annoying. The vision plan has already been renewed, so that shouldn't be there. We're just discussing the dental plan and the MVP medical insurance plan. But yes, these plans are not, they don't affect the police department. They go through different plans. So this would just be DPW and Village Hall employees. And just for your information, the dental plan does not have any change in rates. It's the same as it was last year. The MVP plan has approximately 6.41% increase across the board for like single, family, and parent coverage. But I've also included there the possibility of us changing to an age to 30 rider rate for children. This is for dependent children. I know, honestly, this would affect me, and it would affect at least one other employee, that we have children who are either have, they're still living with us, but they're too old to be covered by the current insurance plan. And this would allow them to stay on our insurance until they are 30 years old. And if we go for that, the increase would, instead of being 6.41%, it would be 6.48%.
Okay. Now, I hate to use your child as an
That's
example.
okay.
But is your child still in school?
Yes, my
As
daughter
compared-
is in college right now, but she started college late. So yeah, she'll be turning 26 this year. So she will be coming, I think after 26, they can't be covered by your insurance.
It's cut off at 26, and she's in school. She doesn't have a full-time job that provides health insurance. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. She's a full-time student, so she does not have a full-time job.
Okay. And you believe that this particular rider to age 30, which would increase the statutory age from 26 to 30, applies to only one other person?
I know it applies to one other person. I haven't asked the other employees, and I can if you like. Who else it would
Well,
affect.
this renewal has to be effected by when? When do we have to approve it?
Unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head. Usually they give me plenty of advance warning. I'll try and find that out for you.
Okay, because we'd like to know when we have to renew by. That's sort of important. Is it
Right.
impending?
I don't think it's imminent.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very curious is that full-time students, when I went to school and my kids went to school, under the college policy, there is an insurance plan for the kids in school. Post the passage of Obamacare, many of the schools have stopped offering insurance for their kids. And they're putting them into letting them sign up independently for an Obama plan. So what used to be something that was fully covered by the schools have now stepped away from in many cases, not all. And I just don't know what the facts are. So the question there is, of course, is your child in a school where they were covered by insurance?
So we have, Trustee Brooke raises an interesting question. He doesn't believe he has enough information, and I think that's an important point with respect to the issue of extending coverage to any children above the age of 26. Have you found out when this renewal must be effected?
Yes, June 1st.
Okay, all right. So would you give us another month on this? Would
Sure.
that be okay?
Absolutely.
Let's table this and see what our options are with respect to the adult students. And we'll revisit it next month. All right, next item, accept resignation of part-time police officer Emma Sullivan as of February 1st, so it's retroactive. My comment on that is the loss of police officer Sullivan means that we don't have any female officers on our force, which is somewhat disappointing to me. And, it would be nice if there was a method by which we could recruit additional female officers, but this is just an administrative item. So let me make the motion. Yeah. Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accepts the resignation of part-time police officer Emma Sullivan, who has accepted a full-time position. Congratulations with the town of Blooming Grove. I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Brooke. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is Trustee Shaw on, or we've lost her?
She texted me. She's disconnected and will not be rejoining.
Okay, so it's just 4-0 on that. Trustee Brooke, Trustee Shaw should be indicated as not present for the vote, not voting. All right. Now another interesting item, only because I served as a judge in Rockland County, and I was taking cash and checks, and it drove me crazy. Add online court payments through Municipay. Elizabeth, do you know anything about this? I mean, I kind of know what it is.
Right. Well, I have a small update to that. I mean, basically, we had signed up with Municipay to accept online payments. It's been absolutely fine. Yeah, and we get online water payments and other payments, but it wasn't connected to the court system. And recently, Municipay was taken over by another company called Auto Agent, I think. And they sent out an email saying that they have more services, including that they accept court payments. I did reach out to the judge and the court clerk just to get their input. The court clerk said that they might have to clear this with the Office of Court Administration. So this might be premature. Maybe we have to wait for them to do their bit first. But I guess I was just interested in getting the idea out to the trustees and, your opinion about it. Or if you just feel, you wait to see what they say and follow their lead.
Why don't we see what OCA has to say and then follow the recommendations of the judge and the court clerk that has to actually process the payments, okay? So we'll revisit this once they get the okay from OCA. Item number F, authorize clerk to publish RFP for the Weewa Park Beach. I've met several times with the Weewa Park Committee, and we've discussed how we're going to operate the beach this summer. And we've looked at it it's essentially a two-pronged approach. As I mentioned earlier, the last meeting, there's a possibility of self-management. If we self-manage, of course, we have to concern ourselves with insurance coverage. If we go for an RFP and we seek the services of a management company, it's not going to insulate us from any liability claims. We're the owner of the beach, we're the owner of the park, will be named defendants. So it's really, the issue is not one of liability, the issue is one of insurance. But I'd like to explore both possibilities. And in exploring the possibility of hiring a management company, as we did last year, we would need an RFP. So I'm seeking approval from the Board of Trustees to publish an RFP for a management company to run the beach as it did over the last several years. The chair of the Weewa Park Committee, Matt Tenari, has a list of 5 or 6 companies which may be interested in running the beach. We'd obviously look for the best service and price. So I make a motion, and I will be drafting the RFP. I make a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize Clerk Dougherty to publish a request for proposals for the Weewa Park Beach for the summer of 2024. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Anybody have anything they want to add?
So I think it's a good path forward. Mayor, you indicated that you were going to draft the RFP. Will you circulate that to the trustees prior to it being finalized?
Absolutely.
Great.
I'll be happy.
Thank you.
Anything else? I know Tinka's not on. We're all good? Okay, so I'll move that that I be authorized to prepare and Elizabeth publish a request for proposals for the Weewa Beach for the summer of 2024. Do I have a second? I think I had the second, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous 4-0. Trustee Shaw not voting. Okay. Thank you. I've had numerous conversations on item number G with Elizabeth about how we send out mail at the village hall. And I've seen her physically placing stamps on letters, dozens and dozens of letters that go out on a daily basis. And from my perspective, in order to save time and to make her job and Denise's job, when Denise works with her, easier, I see no reason why the village should not rent a postage meter. Going to the post office and buying stamps might be a lot of fun personally, but the fact is that in an office, to be more efficient, a postage meter is not an uncommon item. I know that in my office in White Plains, we have a postage meter. I'm sure that many people out there on Zoom probably work in offices with postage meter. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth, because I know that it's something she'd like to add to our office inventory to tell us what the prospective costs would be for postage meters.
Okay, well, I did look into a company called, I think it was Quadient. It's the information is posted online. And there are 2 options. You can lease or you can rent. And basically the leasing is a longer period of time. And I think overall it's probably a little bit cheaper. Anyway, and then they have different, what they sent to me was 2 different postage meters, and one has a little bit more functionality than the other. I do think one good thing about this is that we would let, Denise use it. Denise actually has a lot more mailings than me. She has 5 big mailings a year of about 700 letters each. I only have 1 big mailing a year, which is for the taxes. And for the other things that I mail, usually I buy pre-stamped envelopes. And I end up using the stamps just when we go over the regular postage and you have to top it up a bit. Yeah. So anyway, basically it's just you don't pay they have one option where it's I think you commit to 39 months and then it's $62.99 a month, or you can commit to the 63 months, which I guess is about 5 years, and it's $57 a month, so it's a little bit cheaper. And then the slightly more expensive machine, you commit to 39 months and it's $78 a month, or you commit to the 63 months and it's $67 a month. And then with the rental, you commit to 12 months and it's $27 a month, or you commit to 24 months and it's $25 a month. And then it says you get an extra 6 months free, or if you commit to 36 months, it's $23 a month. And you get 6 additional months free. I know these are a lot of numbers, so. And then the other one is, again, it's a little bit more, it's slightly more advanced machine. It's a little bit more expensive.
Can
I think
So,
can I
think about it a bit?
can I ask sorry, go ahead.
Deputy Mayor has a question or a comment.
Elizabeth, I know that the town clerk just went through all this analysis of leasing and buying, and if you want to give Marissa a call, maybe she'll give you some insight.
I will
as to
do
what-
that. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I'll do that. We can get everybody's comments now and we could finish this next month if you want, after I get to talk to her. That would be great.
Trustee Scherer?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. I'm generally a fan of, well, let me just ask the question. What do you get for that advanced machine relative to the basic model? Are there real benefits?
One of the things it says is it's like a self moistener. So I guess it feeds the envelopes and seals them. To be honest, like I said, I actually don't do that much mailing. I mean, most of the time the pre-stamped envelopes work for me most of the time. But this would be more, I think, an issue for Denise, because she has, like I said, 5 large mailings a year in addition to the other things that she mails.
Well, sounds like if you speak to Denise and speak to the town clerk, I'm sure, my guess is the trustees are going to be fine with your recommendation. I will say, I think taking a longer term view is generally the right way to do these things. Hopefully the village is going to be around in 3 to 5 years. So that would just be my one comment. And I'm generally in favor of buying the better machine for efficiency. But again, if you're paying for features we're not going to ultimately use, then obviously it doesn't make sense. But look forward to hearing about your discussions with the town clerk and Denise.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so we'll revisit this and make a decision, probably make the purchase decision next month after a full report regarding what the town has done. Okay, everyone in agreement with that? Great. Okay, now the item H, this is quality, again, a sort of a quality of life issue, like the dogs, a discussion of Sunday deliveries for village residents. I've gotten calls, at least half a dozen since December, where residents say, I've got something that has to be delivered today, Sunday. One person didn't have a car. They couldn't go down to the train station to meet the Amazon driver. Another person needed their prescriptions, an elderly woman living in the park. And it seems to me, and also the Father Rick from St. Mary's called me and complained about the fact that he couldn't get deliveries on Sundays. And once he called me, and I got an endorsement from our village priest that Sunday deliveries should be permitted, I thought it's a good idea to discuss it with the Board of Trustees. So the question becomes, should we permit Sunday deliveries? And if we do, John, in our preliminary discussions at the Board of Assessment Review yesterday, made a good point. Should we limit it to certain types of vehicles? Amazon drivers use vans, but there's also trucks. And some people who may have an objection to a truck coming in and driving the roads on Sunday might be more willing to allow vans to drive through the village to make their deliveries. So I would open this subject up to the board, and then, very much like the dog issue, I'd open it up to the public generally, so perhaps we can reach a consensus as to whether Sunday is an appropriate day for people to receive Amazon and other deliveries here in the village. So I'll start with you, Deputy Mayor, because I got a sense of what you're going to say.
Well, quality of life, I kind of tend towards not having deliveries on Sunday. But I understand that, we do have, Fresh Direct is allowed to come in on
Yes,
Sunday,
Fresh
is
Direct
that
comes in
correct?
on Sunday, yes.
And do they come in, they're allowed to come in trucks?
Yes, they come in trucks.
So, but I would, I just think Sunday's kind of a day when people like to take walks around the lake and not have to think about trucks on the road. So, I mean, I, again, want to hear from the residents, but we do allow food trucks, certainly not other trucks. I would not want to see that, but.
What about vans?
Well,
You're not crazy about it.
I'm not crazy about it,
Okay.
but let's see what the residents have to say.
Trustee Brooke?
People who work during the week may not be here. You're talking about, 2 or 3 trucks in the course of a day. I'm in favor of permitting Amazon trucks to come.
Well, it might be
The
Amazon,
vans.
could be DHL, I mean.
DHL, whatever.
yeah.
I've had documents that I've had to receive, and it's been challenging if they can't get the documents to me like DHL. So I'm in favor of having this stuff delivered on the weekend.
Trustee Scherer?
Yeah, I'm in favor of opening up Sunday. I don't candidly know what the difference is between Saturday or Sunday. But here's my issue, and as some of you know, I like to run not only the trails of Tuxedo Park, but also the roads. And those delivery vans go too fast. And so, this just comes back to speed enforcement. It's really not about what days they're in the park, but, maybe slapping with them with a few tickets won't change their behavior. I don't know. It doesn't seem to change their behavior in the city with respect to parking. But that's my only concern. But I'd be in favor of opening it up. It seems like there is a real need that residents have, and as Trustee Brooke mentioned, many of us are not. We're only in Tuxedo Park on the weekends.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom want to make a comment on that? Personal opinion as to Sunday deliveries? No. Okay. Then we'll approach that the same as the dogs. We'll put it out and see what kind of response we get from the residents generally, and then we'll revisit this issue over the next couple of months. Okay. I'd like to return, Brian's probably in his office, to the landscaper licensing law. Brian, are you there?
I am. The provision that I was hoping was in there is not in there, that allows you to, adopt, without having to include the workers' comp provision, allows you to adopt it essentially from time to time as you deem necessary without having to change the law. So I added the workers' comp provision, and I did circulate it to the board members by email.
Okay. All right. That's great. And the next step would be to make a motion to schedule a public hearing on the landscaper licensing law as it's before us tonight.
Correct.
The last draft that I saw of this licensing law was in a pretty rough form. And it seemed to me you had asked to have the various aspects of the code in that document. They weren't in the document that I saw.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, these are changes that need to be made.
Well,
And
the way I see it, Jim, with respect to the actually citing the code provisions in plain English, that will be within the body of the license that the application that is signed by the landscaper. It doesn't have to be in the code itself, but in the documents that are provided, it will have a plain English code provision that is, the prohibited actions will be listed and they'll be signing off on it. It'll be this various 4 or 5 sections will be listed and they'll be available for the landscaper so that they'll read it and they'll say, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. It doesn't have to be in the code itself. Brock,
The other, no, sorry, I didn't.
go ahead. Anything else?
The other thing was, there's something still in there about leaf debris and whatnot. Now, you have all these things that are in the code. Is this leaf debris, spreading that around, is that something new? Or is it in the code?
I think the reference was to leaf debris on your neighbor's property. Wasn't that the reference? It says
Yeah, I think that's it.
you can spread it out on your property, but you can't put it on your neighbor's property.
It's something new.
I don't believe it's new. I believe it's in,
Okay, so then maybe it could be with the others.
yeah, okay,
As in
Yeah.
the code.
right.
Just to be clear, that provision that you're referring to is not new. That was part of the existing code.
He said it was part of the existing code. The attorney who drafted
So
it.
then it can be referenced.
Yes, it can be, the section can be referenced, yes.
Taken out of where it is now.
Yeah, okay, all right, Brian, so, I make the resolution based upon your amendment, your amended, proposed law, which includes, workers' comp proof. Brian?
Yeah, that's all you need to do. Resolution scheduling that law
Okay, let me-
as drafted for a public hearing at your March meeting.
Thank you. All right.
Brian,
Let me make, a resolution. Hold on.
I'm sorry. You said you sent an email around. I just, oh, I see. I have it. Thank you.
The
Sent around at 8:07 PM. I got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I'm looking for it in my script. I shouldn't have revealed there's a script.
Just so it's clear, what we've added is in section 67-3E10. E is in Eric 10. Provide proof of workers' compensation insurance for any employees.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, let me just add that. All right. Okay. Be it resolved, I make the following motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees schedule a public hearing on proposed local law 1, which is indicated to be Chapter 67 landscapers for the Board of Trustees meeting of March, hold on for a sec. I don't have a calendar.
I think it's
March.
March 20th for
20th.
March 20th, 2024. Do I have a second on the motion to schedule public hearing for local law, proposed local law 1?
second.
Second by the deputy mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I haven't seen the law as it's been revised, so I'm happy to do it. But I'd like to see what we're actually talking. There's talk about whether this is about enforcement or new rules. There was talk about a $10,000 fine that Ryan mentioned. I'm totally against people having to pay a $10,000 fine. You know,
There's no fine within the body of the
But,
law.
but
it is an enforcement issue or is it a new laws issue? So I'm happy to schedule it because you know, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
Let's set it up for the 20th.
All right, the motion carries 4-0 to set up the public hearing for March 20th on proposed local law number 1, chapter 67, landscapers. Thank you. Okay,
So that hearing would occur before the trustee meeting?
Should.
yeah,
So
that's the
7
first
p.m.
item on the agenda, yeah. And we'll schedule it for 6:30, all right? That makes everybody happy. The regular meeting is at 7.
Okay.
Okay, all right. We have Tinka's, request to add an item to the agenda, four-lane training. 10 hours at $2,500 an hour to educate the staff and the trustees with respect to the change of QuickBooks Online to the desktop version. So I would make a motion that we budget $2,500 for the purchase of the training session. As I said, 10 hours from 4-lane for QuickBooks training. Is there a second?
Well, second, but I have a question.
Okay, then don't second it.
Well, I can second the motion.
Okay, all right. We can discuss it now. You're absolutely right.
No, I'm just seems a little steep in price. But
Yeah, I mean, a hard
Well,
part,
can-
when we talked about it originally, it was the fact that we spend a fair amount of time signing these forms one-on-one. You know, I'm involved in signing corporate, you know, T&Es for everything, and there's a way to do it electronically. The idea of having an electronic set of books will simplify Elizabeth's job and simplify our job. The question of whether there's any value in our showing up at a training session, and I'm not sure there's much value there. And I agree with you, 2,500 seems a lot because the person providing the service is we're purchasing the product from them. They should provide training without any fee. But I'm not qualified to ask those questions. If they want us to use their product, we do it.
do we actually see this, whatever proposal in writing that it's only 10 hours and $2,500? And what it entails?
I haven't seen it, but
No.
I just feel like we don't have really good information. We don't have the sponsor on the phone. And I don't feel like, John, you'd mentioned that you had the email. It'd be great to forward that. I just don't feel like we have enough information to be making this decision right now, and it doesn't sound like it needs to be made right now.
Well, let me just say that this is added to the agenda based on the request that Trustee Shaw made. So I'm not in any position to comment on it. I put it on the agenda because she's entitled to add it. So,
Of course.
More information to March.
okay, it's tabled.
Okay.
By agreement of the board, it's tabled. Okay. All right, that concludes new business. We move on to audit of claims.
Okay.
Elizabeth?
Yes. So just a introductory remarks. Normally every month I print the audit of claims and the board we discuss, and the board signs off on all of the vouchers, and the audit of claims is a list of all those vouchers. But we've been going through this transition period with the accounting software. So in December, we had a very small audit of claims because we had to stop inputting information as of November 30th. And then we didn't input anything for like 6 weeks. So last month, so in December, I had a very small audit of claims. Last month, I didn't have anything. And now this month, we're making up for it. What I did was I printed 2 sets of reports. Since I've already submitted December reports, I did an audit of claims for January and an audit of claims for February. The audit of claims for January is very large because it really does actually include a lot of things that normally would have been thrown in with December, but they just couldn't be because we couldn't input anything for a while. So with that being said, the audit of claims for the general fund for the month of January was $511,916.64. The sewer fund was $56,462.49. The water fund was $48,095.57. And the professional fees was $1,149. And in addition, I would just like to add that the general fund was not only large because the period it covered was frankly longer than it normally would have been, but it also included things like the road paving, which just on its own was almost $200,000. And then the audit of claims for this month, and this is just more of a normal audit of claims. The general fund is $231,598.72. The sewer fund is $3,650.58, and the water fund is $42,210.56. The general fund is normal for February. February does include debt repayment, so there's like a $75,000 debt repayment included in that $231,000. So it's higher than normal, but it's normal for February, if that makes any sense. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for the clerk treasurer from any members of the board? None? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Budget transfers?
Yeah, so
This
there were a few. I posted them on the website. I can read through them if you want.
Are they large budget transfers? Are they over
Yes,
5,000
yes, there are some large ones because for legal. But so I'll just read through them.
Yeah, please.
I'm transferring from the New York State Retirement 9010.8 $3,000 to judicial personnel, which is 1110.1. Again, from retirement 9010.8 $1,700 to IT support for the treasurer, which is 1325.44. I'm transferring from mayor personnel, which is item budget line 1210.1, $20,000 to budget line 1420.4, which is legal contractual. I'm transferring from 1620.2, which was buildings equipment, $15,000 to legal contractual 1.1420.4. I'm transferring from New York State Retirement 9010.8, $15,000 to legal contractual, which is 1420.4. And I'm transferring from New York State Retirement, the police and fire fund. It says, I think it's supposed to say, it says $3,000. I wonder if that's supposed to be 30. I think that's supposed to be 30. 30, 60. Yeah, it's $30,000 to 1420.4, again, legal contractual. The total amount being transferred to legal contractual is $80,000. And the last budget fund transfer is from 1210.1, which is mayor personnel, $500 to 1950.4, which is taxes on village property. Then we have two transfers in the sewer fund, 8130.5 INI, $18,000 is being transferred to 8130.1, which is sewage personnel. And 8130.5 INI, $55,000 is being transferred to 8130.4 sewage contractual. And lastly, in the water fund, 8130.4 water administration, $10,000 is being transferred to 8340.4, which is transportation and distribution contractual. And that's it.
I just have one question. The transfer to legal contractual, is that to our current village attorney or past debts to prior attorneys?
I didn't look at it like that. I just looked at the balance in the code. We haven't overdrawn yet, but we have used, I think, 93% of the funds that we budgeted, and we're only 3/4 of the way through the year. So I'm just anticipating.
Yeah, okay, so that's legal. We're close to our budgeted amount for this
That's
year.
correct, right.
Okay. All right, thank you. We can discuss that issue at least partly in executive session. All right, we're up to closing comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak about anything they've seen this evening or any other issues on their mind? Yes, Ms. Hempel.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've been tasked by Elizabeth Côtenoir to make a second set of comments. So if I may read her comments. To the Board of Trustees, My second comment is in regard to the conversation in the last two Board of Trustees meetings about the use of divers to continue the mitigation of the Eurasian milfoil. Our lakes manager, AJ's recommendation from the start was to use the chemical approach to reduce a large number of plants in all three lakes, and then to follow up each year with a program of diving to keep the growth down. As a member of the Lake Committee, I researched diving companies and spoke with numerous communities about their experiences. Everyone I spoke with was pleased with the results of this two-step program that has managed to keep the new growth well under control. Not one person I spoke with discouraged our community from using divers, and all recommended the two companies that were presented to the former Board of Trustees. The village should continue to follow the protocol recommended by our lakes manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hempel. Anybody else from the public like to make any
Um,
closing comments?
Mayor, can I just respond to that?
Sure, of course.
Chuyen, thank you for that. And I hope everyone is aware that we are following AJ's advice, that we've put out an RFP for divers. Elizabeth, I think we're still waiting on one party to submit a response, but we will be bringing in divers on a limited basis, I believe during the spring, in a very specific part of the lake over by the village dock, where we weren't able to use chemicals. So I do think that two-step approach has been successful, and we are in regular contact with AJ and listen very closely to his advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee. Anybody else from the public have any final comments? Okay, thank you. Any members of the board wish to have any final comments? Deputy Mayor Lindsay?
No.
Trustee Brooke?
No.
Trustee Scherer? Okay, thank you all. At this point, we're going to enter executive session for some discussions regarding water bills, as well as legal matters. I move that we go into executive session for on those two issues. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by the deputy mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And we'll excuse the public at this point in time. We'll resume for any resolutions resulting from executive session, or simply to move for adjournment. Thank you all for attending. Everyone have a good night. Okay.
We have Brian Stolar.
Yeah, that's fine.
Joshua Share. Everybody else is there. I'm going to.
Okay. We are out of executive session, and we have one motion with respect to the issue of requests for sewer charge adjustments. And I'll make the motion. I move with respect to the sewer adjustment request for 95 Cliff Road, that request be denied. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. With respect to accounts number 547 and 548, with respect to the issue of the town being the sewer provider, I make a motion that we approve the requests for the refunds in the amount of $621.08 and $664.06. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. With respect to the property on Summit Road that we discussed. I move that we deny the request for a refund of $433.74. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brook. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With respect to account number 66, which is a town account with a balance of $30,973, we will table that request and seek official proof from the Bankruptcy Court of the United States before revisiting the issue. I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.